I would say it is an incredible zechus, Baruch Hashem, to be able to learn with all of you. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but at least Baruch Hashem, an opportunity to be virtually together. So today's daf is Kuf Samech Tes. We thank all of our sponsors. I'll list all of the sponsors in the WhatsApp chat, as well as in the shared description on YouTube. But we thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, our monthly Talmud Torah sponsor, and I'll say with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Kuf Samech Tes 169. We are picking up Emir Hashem on Kuf Samech Ches Amud Beis 168b, approximately 6 lines up from the bottom. Tanra Abanan. Harei Shebava Amar Avad Shtar. So if Reuven comes along and Reuven says, I lent Shimon $1,000 and I lost my shtar. Even though again Reuven furnishes witnesses and the witnesses say, yeah, we saw this document, we signed this document on behalf of Reuven. The halacha is in kosvin shtar. We do not go ahead and write a second shtar. Now the Gemara says medar more. When is this so? B'shtar halva. When it comes to a loan document, because with a loan document we are concerned that if it turns out that Reuven's lying and he has 2 loan documents, that gives him the ability to collect twice. Aval shtari mekach umemkar kosim. When it comes to a sale, you can go ahead and write it. However, chutz min achrayei shebo, but you can't write any guarantees. So in other words, so that halacha l'maisa, you could write the document, because again, that only impacts the buyer and the seller, but you can't go ahead and write any guarantees in that document which could adversely impact any other purchasers. Top of Kuf Samech Tes 169 here. Rabbi Shmuel says, Af shtari mekach umemkar in kosvin. Rabbi Shmuel says, no, even sale documents you also can't write. What's Rabbi Shmuel's logic? Because he says, so we're going to see this later on days. Shmuel holds that essentially what we call osios niknos b'mesira, which means when you give over a document, the person acquires the document and the transaction vests by simply giving over the document. Now, the converse is true also, which is if a person enters into an arrangement and then returns the document, he has the ability to reverse the transaction. So, for example, if I give Reuven a maton, I give him a gift, and along with that gift, I give him a shtar, a document that says I'm giving him a gift. Once he takes the shtar, he acquires the gift. If he gives the shtar back, ultimately, again, he effectively gives back the gift. So Shmuel therefore says, even with a sale document, we're not going to go ahead and write a second one. Why? Because we are concerned that perhaps the purchaser returns the document, and if he did so, he returns the item, and therefore there'd be no need to write another transaction document. Because Shmuel holds that when you give a gift, if the recipient returns the gift document, ultimately, again, the gift is considered to be returned. Incredible. So this is the concept of what we call, Rashbam points out over here, this really tap Rashbam, this really osios niknos b'mesira kidul kamon gabi matano techashinan dilma la'acha shenichtvo v'nastu asashtar hechser lo lokeach zelamochar. So we're concerned that if the purchaser comes along and he says, hey, I don't have my shtar, maybe he returned the shtar to the seller, and as such went ahead and essentially reneged on the sale. In other words, he gave back the item. Okay, so the Gemara goes on. Chum say no matanaso kames. Now it happens that the Chum disagree, and again we'll see this a little bit in greater depth later on. But the Chacham hold that ein osios niknos b'mesira. That essentially the Chacham say that a document is there as a form of proof, but halacha l'maisa. Let's say in the case of a recipient of a gift, so if the recipient gives back the gift, gives back the document, the gift does not go back. So now let's go out for just a second. So remember again, the Tanakama said that halach l'maisa, if a person lost the shtar, so if it's a sale, if it's a shtar that represents a sale, we'll rewrite the shtar, but no achrayis. No responsibility or no guarantees. My time, what was the reason? Safra, the fishin kosin shtei sharos asad da'achas. So also we saw this in yesterday's daf as well. Safra holds we do not write 2 documents on one parcel of land. Why? Dilma azl bal chov v'tarf le'lahai. Because what's going to happen? So let's say, for example, Reuven went ahead and sold Shimon a field. And then what happens? Reuven had a pre-existing creditor. So the creditor seizes the field from Shimon. Now Shimon has the ability to collect it from other purchasers who purchased subsequent to his transaction. So Dilma Azul Balchov Tarvle. So now again the creditor will come, seize the field from Shimon, Va'azul Hai Umafik Chad V'Tarvle Kuchos. And now Shimon is going to go ahead and again make himself whole by seizing from someone who bought after his transaction. And now again we're concerned about collusion. that Shimon could say to the creditor, Shufli di'ikum ba, so do me a favor, don't take anything from me right now. Allow me to establish some level of ownership. V'hadar ta tirfan umapik achrina, and then go ahead and seize the land, and I'll just go and seize more land for myself. V'hadar v'azal l'kuchos achrini, and v'hadar azal tarif l'kuchos achrini, and Shimon will go ahead and seize from a second set of purchasers. So essentially, we're concerned that if you write two documents for the same parcel of land, it could easily lead to inappropriate behavior. But one second. But one second. We have a halacha that generally, again, when a lender collects from something, so when he collects his debt, the document is torn. So if the document is torn, how would he use it for a second collection? Maybe we're talking about a case where the basin didn't tear the shtar. That can't be. So we're going to see that when Basin gives someone a right to collect from, let's say, encumbered or sold properties, there's a process. So the first process, ultimately, again, is what we call a tirfa. Tirfa is a document that says that this person is entitled to collect from encumbered properties. Now, the difference is in the tirfa, it has to say that the original loan document or purchase document has been torn. So that, in other words, it can't be inappropriately used the second time. After the tirfa, which is a document that says that the adversely impacted party could collect from encumbered properties, you write what's called an adkarta. An adkarta is where the basin identifies the piece of property that is going to be seized by the affected party. So in the adkarta, it has to say that we tore up the tirfa. And if it doesn't say we tore up the tirfa, then the adkarta is not good. The choshuma de lo kasebe karina la adkarta. Now, after the adkarta, where they identify the piece of property that's going to be seized, they do a shuma, which means evaluation. Now, the shuma has to have written in it that ultimately, again, that the adkarta was torn. And if the adkarta does not have written in it that they tore up the shuma, it's not a good adkarta. So the point over here is you see that they would tear up the loan document. So why would there be a concern that somebody would collect twice? Maybe the adversely impacted party, ultimately, again, it's not his own claim, but rather, again, it's his father's claim. Okay. In a case of collusion, why would the impacted party need to say to the creditor, do me a favor, don't take anything right now, give me a little bit more time to be vested in this? After all, again, if we'll call him Shimon, the adversely impacted party, if he has the ability to take two shtaris, let him just collect from two different people simultaneously. Why does he have to go into collusion with the creditor? To which the Gemara says, no. Imkain nefishe ale bale dinin. Because remember, again, if Shimon keeps seizing property from different people, it's gonna raise the antenna. It's gonna sound the alarm bells. So because of that, he doesn't want to start seizing from different people simultaneously, but rather he wants to space it out. Incredible. So why not write this second shtar as an appropriate shtar? And write as follows. Tavra l'mocher, and write the following receipt to the seller, and let it say, Kol shtari diyafkun al ara da psulin lebar man diyipok bizmana da. That any shtar, right? Go ahead and write in the receipt that any shtar that comes on this piece of land is possible, except, of course, if a shtar is dated with this particular date. So what that does is that takes away the concern that someone is maybe using a fraudulent shtar. What do you see from here? In Kos and Shover, it must be that under normal circumstances, we just don't write a shover. We don't go ahead and write a receipt. Amud Beis or Losai, Kuf Samech Tes Amud Beis 169b. So the Gemara says, Amarle ba'alma Kos and Shover. No, that's not true. In general, we absolutely go ahead and write a shover. We go ahead and we write a receipt. What's the issue over here? The Dilma Azal Bal Chol V'Tarif Minei Delokeach. We're concerned that the creditor is going to come and seize property from the purchaser. Va'azal Ihu V'Tarif L'Kuchos. And ultimately, again, then the purchaser will come and seize from other purchasers. V'Shover Gabi L'Kuchos Leka. And there's no receipt by the other purchasers. Sof L'Kuchos. Lav Amari Da'ara Hadri. But again, at the end of the day, the purchaser is not going to come back to the owner of the land. The concern is that by the time they go ahead and get around to processing their claim, ultimately, again, someone else is going to consume the produce. Or it could also be talking about a case of a purchaser who purchased without a guarantee. If that's the case, then halacha l'maisa, why would this only apply to a situation where of a document of sale? Shouldn't it also apply to shtari halva, to loan documents? To which the Gemara says, Hasam dezuzi masik amri paise balcho bezuze. So in the case of a loan document where it was money that was lent, the assumption is that the what we call the balchov, the debtor, ultimately calmed the borrower, the debtor calmed the lender with money. Hacha de ara masik made the yade demand the masik ara bezuzi lo mafis. But again, here in the case of the sale, we're dealing with the sale of land. Everyone knows that if somebody was wronged in a sale of land, you can't fix that with money. Okay? Amar chutz min ha'achraya sheba. So remember again, so we said before that halacha l'maisa, if a person lost his shtar mechira, right? He sold land. So if you bring the proper testimony, you can recreate the shtar, but halacha l'maisa no achrayas. There is no guarantee inside of the shtar. So the Gemara says as follows. Good. So we are 2, 4, 6 lines down from the top. Hasam dezuzi masik amri paise balchol bezuzi. Hacha dara masik mid yadi demand the masik ara bezuzi lamavais. Good. Amar chutz min achraya shabos. Remember again, you could rewrite if a sale document was lost. You could rewrite it, but not with the achrayas, not with the guarantee inside of it. Says Gemara hechi kasinon. So how would you write it? Amrav Nachman the ksidi haki. Here's how you would write shtara dinan. We are hereby writing this document, and the point of this document, or the power of this document, is not to collect property, neither from encumbered or unencumbered property. So why are we writing this document? Only so that the purchaser should have a validated claim to it. Okay, so Amar Rafam says, Zosmars, what does this show you? Achrayis tos soferhu. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So this gets to a fundamental issue in general about when you have a document, do we assume that any sale of property automatically comes with a guarantee? We call that guarantee achrayis. So what that means is if I sell Ruvain land, is it almost understood that halacha l'maisa, should that land be seized by my creditors, I commit myself to making Ruvain whole. That's called achrayis. If you look at the Rashbam is in the intermediate lines, about 4 lines in achrayis. She'eno kosov b'shtar ela nichtav hashtar stam ta'os shigasoferhu k'mishe kosov bo achrayis tami. So let's say again, so I'm selling the field to Ruvain, and the shtar itself makes absolutely no mention of anything to do with achrayis. So do we assume that really achrayis is included? It's automatically included. The fact that it wasn't written in is a ta'os sofer, is a mistake of the scribe. So the Gemara says as follows. What do you see from here? Achrayis ta'os soferhu. You see from here that in general we assume that any sale comes with achrayis, and therefore omission of achrayis is attributed to scribal error. Now how do we know that? The time of the kasav lehachi, because the only reason in this case why there is no achrayis is because in the shtar it's written explicitly there is no achrayis. So interestingly enough, the fact that you have to write there is no achrayis, there is no guarantee on the sale, indicates to us that the default would be that there is responsibility, there is a guarantee on the sale. Halo kasav hachi gabi. So again, halacha l'maisa, had you not written anything, there would have been an assumption that the transaction actually has achrayis. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. Rav Ashi Amar achrayis lav ta'os soferhu. So Rav Ashi says, no, not true. We do not automatically assume that every sale includes achrayis, and therefore we do not assume that the omission of achrayis, of responsibility or a guarantee in a document, is considered to be scribal error. Perhaps again it's intentional that the seller does not intend to give the buyer any type of guarantee. Umay chutz me'achrayis shabo tolo kasav be'achrayis. When the Brisa says that ultimately again that the document was written chutz me'achrayis without a guarantee, what that just means is there was no mention of a guarantee in the document. So we'll say, so this happens to be in general, a fascinating idea. Again, we're going to come back to this more in tomorrow's daf as well, about this concept of, do we say that every sale by definition comes with achrayus? Do we make that assumption that when you sell someone's property, of course you're going ahead and you're guaranteeing the sale for them, and therefore even if it's not explicitly mentioned in the shtar, we ascribe that to scribal error? Or no, we say we say in general again, Ein achrayus to sofer. No, the omission of achrayus is not a scribal error. Rather, it means a person is not making a guarantee. So this is a fundamental machlokes. So the Gemara says, "Hahu hahi isisa diyov lezuzi lahu gavra lemez ben laaras." Well, this is a very interesting case. Rachel gave to Reuven. Now they're not married, right? Rachel gave to Reuven money in order to purchase land. So what happened? Azal zabin lo shalo ba'achrayus. So what happens? Reuven purchased the land, but interestingly enough, he purchased it without a guarantee. So he just purchased land stam. So the Gemara says, Asi lekamei de Rav Nachman. So they came before Rav Nachman for an adjudication of this. Amarlei litakune shadarti chavalo la'avuse. So Rabbi Nachman says like this. Rav Nachman says like this. That halacha, so the woman could say, listen, Reuven, I appointed you as my shaliach to positively benefit me, not to adversely impact me. So now you went ahead and my assumption was that you were going to buy with achrayus. Why? Because the Gemara is clearly going with the idea that we assume that achrayus are part of any normative transaction. So you, Reuven, went and bought from me a parcel of land without achrayus. That's adversely impacted me. I didn't empower you to be my shaliach to adversely impact me, only to positive impact me. So I'm not going to give a very interesting ruling. So the Gemara says, Zil zabna minei shalo b'achrayus, v'hader zabna nihila b'achrayus. So I'm not going to pass it. It's actually fascinating. I'm not going to say to Reuven, you need to purchase it from the purchaser without achrayus because that was the deal. But now you need to give it to Rachel and you have to guarantee the property to Rachel. So such a fascinating idea. Even though, again, Reuven's not the seller, right? Reuven's the third party. But essentially, since Reuven should have bought that property with achrayus and he failed to do so, therefore, Allah Rav Nachman said, okay, you give her the property, but Allah achrayus has to come from you, Reuven. Really quite fascinating. Okay, so the Gemara goes like this. So again, Reuven buy it from the purchaser without achrayus, without the guarantee of responsibility. Then sell it back to Rachel with achrayus. Incredible. Let's go back to Rabbi Shmuel Omer. So we alluded to this on Amadalos. Remember again, what is this talking about? If I give Reuven a gift, so I give him the object and I give him a document. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says like this. He holds that halacha l'maisa, once I give Reuven the document, ultimately again, Reuven acquires the document and he acquires the gift. Not only that, but if Reuven gives me back the document, then halacha l'maisa, that is tantamount to returning the gift in its totality and it becomes mine again. So again, that's the lashon of Rabbi Shmuel Omer. Someone gives a gift to his friend, and then again, as I gave a matana to Reuven gives me back the document. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Shmuel Omer, says chazra matanaso. So Rabbi Shmuel holds that when you give back the shtar, you effectively give back the debt. The Chum on the other hand say no, matanaso kaim. It's not true. Not true. The matana stands even though Reuven returned the documents. So let's analyze it. Shmuel says, so it says, what happens if I give a gift to Reuven? Now again, to solidify Reuven's claim to the gift, I give him a document. And now what happens? Reuven gives me back the document. Ultimately, again, the gift reverts back. The Chum say no, ein matanaso miskayemes. The Chum on the other hand say no, that halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa, the gift still remains. So what do you see from here? Now again, the way the Rashbam understood this particular machlokas was ultimately, again, in a situation of what we call osios niknas b'mesira. That when you give over a document, does the person acquire the document and does the transaction vest or not? Rabbi Shmuel says yes. Giving over the document affects the transaction to the point that giving back the document will reverse the transaction. The Chum say no, whereas giving over the document will go ahead and give over the property. Giving back the document in no way voids the transaction. Incredible. So we'll say incredible. So we'll see more of that about that. The Chum say Matanas Kimis. So Shmuel says that if I give a gift to Ruvain, and Ruvain gives me back the document, ultimately, again, Chazma Tanaso. So the gift reverts back to me. And the Chacham say no, that Halacha L'maisa, the gift is good. So what says here, in this case, I give a gift to Ruvain, and I cement the gift to him with a shtar. Okay, then Ruvain gives me back the shtar. So what happens here? Shmuel says, giving back of the shtar ultimately represents a reversal of the gift. The Chacham say no, the gift still remains. So, I frack the Gemara. My time with Rav Shmuel. What is Rav Shmuel's logic? That when you go ahead and halacha l'maisa, you give back the shtar, that the transaction reverses. What's his logic? And again, I will say, just to think about this just a moment. Again, gift, is the easiest way to illustrate this. I give Reuven a gift, and I give him a shtar, and now Reuven gives me back the shtar. Rav Shmuel says, the transaction reverses. The land comes back to me. So my time, what's the reason? So Rav Shmuel Amar. So my time, Rav Shmuel Amar Rav Asi Nase Komer Lo Sade Zu Nesun Lechol Kolzman Shashtar Biyadcha. So this is very interesting. So Rav Asi says essentially what we look at is like this: when you give a shtar as part of the conveyance process. So Rav Asi says that halacha l'maisa, we treat it as if you're effectively saying this gift is yours as long as you have the shtar in your hand. So as long as you're in possession of the shtar, ultimately, again, the transaction is good. By inference, if you were to give back the shtar, the transaction would reverse. Okay, good. That's Rabbi Yossi. There's a so I'm Rav Asi. So we'll say if you take not yet. Fine. So we'll say this is Shida Rav Asi. So Gemara says Maskif Rava. Rava says Ihachi Nignav O Avad Nami. So we'll say if that's the case, then even if the shtar was stolen or it was lost, then halacha l'maisa, the transaction should reverse. Because according to Rav Asi, once you go ahead, once the purchaser or the borrower, once the person no longer has the shtar, they really no longer have a hold on the transaction. If that's the case, then why are we only talking about a case where halacha l'maisa gave it back? The truth is, even in a case where Reuven sold something to Shimon lost the document, so halacha l'maisa again, the gift should go back to Reuven. So what's going on over? There's a much more yisodistic machlokes here about osios niknis b'misora, which literally means, can you acquire property and also further benefits just through the giving over of a document or not? That's the meaning that it says osios niknis b'misira. That ultimately, again, when you give over a gift document or a sale document for that matter, the transaction in its entirety is handed over to that individual as well. So the Gemara says that's the machlokes. Shmuel holds osios niknas b'misira. Ultimately, again, so you could convey ownership of a document and by extension the transaction represented in the document simply by giving over the document itself. The Rabbanan on the other hand hold ein osios niknas b'misira. No, halacha l'maisa, that is not correct. And in general, again, words or documents and transactions are not giving over with simple giving over, but rather, again, they need a more formal kinyan. It's supposed to be really incredible. Good. If you take a look, so this is our fundamental machlokes. These are fundamental machlokes. That ultimately, again, do we say osios niknas b'misira or not? When you give over a document, does that conveyance automatically give you rights and ownership over the property as if you engage in a formal kinyan or not? The Shmuel says it does, and the Rabbanan say it does not. Incredible. Okay, take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's the Rashbam Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar. It's in the widest lines, the third line in. So the Rashbam writes as follows. He says, "Bein shtar l'shrayim bekach, bein dematana niknos lemekabel matana lokech mesiras hashtar." So I'll say, so Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds that halacha l'maisa. So whether we're talking about a loan or whether we're talking about a sale of property, once the seller gives over the document to the buyer, ultimately, again, the buyer acquires it. Even though, again, these are words, and words can actually be acquired. It's since the details are written into the shtar. Therefore, again, essentially the transaction vests as soon as the Beis Din receives the klaf. And therefore, again, I will say, so what you begin to see is that the shtar really has all of the power. So therefore, in the same way that halacha l'maisa, when you give over the shtar, so ultimately the recipient receives the shtar and also the ownership of the property. So when you give back the shtar, ultimately, again, you're yielding or ceding those very same ownership, right? So plug tehi, Ba'mocher es asinas. The Gemara says this was an earlier machlokes. So even though, again, we said before that when there is a machlokes between Shmuel and the Rabbanim the halacha follows the Rabbanim, because again, in general, whenever we have Yochid Rab halacha kirabim, afilu hilchos Shmuel Gamliel, dosios niknas b'mesira. Nevertheless, interestingly enough, the halacha here still follows Shmuel Gamliel, namely that a document is acquired through giving over. In other words, you acquire the document and the entire transaction. Even though, again, you don't have a supporting document that says, I have conveyed to you, in other words, I either seller or I borrower have or lender have conveyed to you all rights. Right. Afilu hachi the Gemara says that the way we paskin is that osios niknos b'mesira. So it means you take a document, you give it over to someone, that person acquires the document and acquires all of the accompanying rights to this. Back to the Gemara. So the Gemara said one more time. So actually, let's go back. My time. So let's go back now. So the Gemara says, why is it? Now remember, why is what? Machlokes Rav Shmuel and the Tanakama. So Rav Shmuel says that halacha l'maisa, if a person goes ahead, I give Reuven a gift, and now Reuven gives back the shtar matana. What is the status? Rav Shmuel says the status is voided. The property comes back to me. The chayalim say no, the property does not come back to me. So my time, Rav Shmuel. What's Rav Shmuel's logic? Ravasi naaseh ke'omer lo sadeh zunesuna lecho kolzman shashtar biyadcha. So this is very interesting. So Rav Asi wants to say that in this lashon of the Mishnah, of hanosin matar lechaver, I'm giving a gift to my friend. Vehechser lo as hashtar. Now my friend gives me back the document. So Rav Asi says essentially the way this gift is structured is where the giver, the grantor, or the seller says to the purchaser, as long as you are holding on to my shtar, ultimately, again, you are the owner of this property. And the inference is, but if you're no longer holding on to the shtar, then the property reverts back to me. Says, well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Nignav o ne'evad nami. If that's the case, then halacha l'maisa, what about the case where the shtar itself was stolen or was lost? So would you say in this case also, now say here you have a situation where we'll call it either the borrower or the purchaser doesn't have a document, right? There's no document there. So what are we going to say? That halacha l'maisa, again, the transaction is voided. Ela amar rabba ba'osios niknos b'mesira kamiflagi. Rather, you go back to what we were saying before. What's their machlokes? Their machlokes is in the realm of osios niknos b'mesira. Can you go ahead and convey ownership of let's say a document to a third party, enabling that third party to potentially collect? So the Gemara says, Reb Shmuel Silber, osios niknos b'mesira. So Reb Shmuel holds that halacha l'maisa, you could acquire a document even just by handing it over. And I will say, so as we said before, this cuts both ways. In other words, the same way if I'm giving Reuven a gift, once I give him the document, he acquires the gift, and I can't renege. But the reverse is also true, which is if Reuven gives me back the document, then by definition, the gift itself has been returned to me. Incredible. Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan on the other hand hold that halacha l'maisa ein osios niknos b'besira. The Rabbanan on the other hand hold that halacha l'maisa, no, letters or documents cannot be conveyed with simple mesira, but rather, again, there is a greater process to be involved. So this is a yisodistic machlokes about what happens essentially when you give over a shtar. Does the giving over of the shtar essentially close out the transaction? In which case, after the shtar is given, we're good to go, or no? No, a shtar, that's not what a shtar does, right? The shtar is a raya, a shtar is a proof, but it doesn't necessarily affect the transaction. I will say now this could have a major nafkamina. And what's nafkamina? Nafkamina will be in the realm of gift giving. I give Reuven a gift. I give him a document to solidify that gift. And then what happens? Reuven returns the document to me. See, if you hold in osios niknos b'mesira, that ultimately, again, when you acquire a document, you don't automatically acquire all of the accompanying rights. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, even if Reuven goes ahead and returns the gift document to me, it's irrelevant. Rabbi Shmuel, on the other hand, holds that no. Rabbi Shmuel says that halacha l'maisa, if Reuven decides to renege, Reuven has every single right to do that. He has every right to do that. So the Gemara says this: my time to Shmuel. What's Rabbi Shmuel's logic? Ravasi nasek omerlo sadei nesuna lechol kozman shashtar biyadcha. So again, Ravasi holds. So Ravasi says that Rabbi Shmuel's logic is essentially what the seller is saying to the buyer is: this is your document as long as you hold. This is your land as long as you hold on to the transaction. So but the inference is once you lose your deed, right? Once you ultimately go ahead and lose your shtar, the land is no longer yours. Maskef Rava says ihachi nignav o avad nami. If that's the case, even if the travel piece was lost or was stolen, same thing. In other words, he doesn't have a shtar for it. If you don't have a shtar for it, then ultimately again you can't claim it. Allah Amarabba. So Rabbi says, you're right. The fundamental machlokes Rabbi say is once again, are real letters, meaning real nesira, allowed on the plane. Rabbi Shmuel holds that ultimately, in general, halacha l'maisa, you could acquire a document and the ensuing transaction through the handing over of the document, and therefore halacha l'maisa. Again, remember that also means that if you want to return that which you have been given, all you need to do is return the document. But Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan hold ein osios niknas b'mesira. The Rabbanan, on the other hand, hold that no, that halacha l'maisa, you can't automatically assume that just through giving over the document that everything vests and the transaction works. So essentially, what we are left with over here is in the midst of a dramatic machlokes about osios niknas b'mesira, which again essentially means when you give over a transactional document, does the party acquire the document and all the details of the transaction or not? Rabbi Shmuel says yes. Rabbi Shmuel says, well, if I lend Reuven money or I gift him money and I give him a document, with that document he acquires complete rights over the gift. Chum say no, he does not. He does not. So I'll say, so where does this come up? So this will come up in Reuven gets the gift and then Reuven gives me back the gift, or he gives me back the shtar. According to Shmuel, this works. Right? This works. Why does this work? Because since osios niknas b'mesira, the same way I conveyed ownership of the property to Reuven through the shtar, so if Reuven gives me back the shtar, the property comes back to me. Versus the chachamim who say that halacha l'maisa no matanasal miskamis. And I will say, what's the chachamim's logic? This is very important. The chachamim say like this: once you've acquired property, we've seen this many times before. Once you've acquired property, in order to divest yourself of your ownership interest, you have to do something significant. It's not enough just to say, I don't want it. You have to actually do something meaningful and significant to rid yourself of that property. So simply giving back the shtar is not going to be enough. So I'll say, so this is the raging machlokes ultimately over here between Rabbi Shmuel and the Rabbanan. All right, we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach, everyone. Incredible. I'm sorry that I'm not there with the chevra, but it's a great zechus to be able to learn together each and every day. And wishing everyone again a beautiful, uplifting, meaningful day. Besuros tovos for Klal Yisrael.